Hey guys, welcome to week 8 of online learning. This is going to be week 2 for electricity. So last week I asked you guys to brainstorm a list of different things that utilized energy or electricity in your house. And so far, the submissions that I've seen have done a really nice job. Some of you guys even used your past experience from 4th or 5th grade and your knowledge of circuits and how they work. And you guys really were pretty in depth on your description. So really nice job. I know you guys explained how the plugs and batteries are used to operate different things, which is awesome that you already have a general understanding of that. So keep up the great work. So we're going to start this week with a little bit of a worksheet with notes that are going to require you guys to watch 3 videos that I've made. So this is going to be part 1, and it's going to be on batteries. A lot of you guys have given examples on how batteries are used at home. So you've given, your remote, a video game controller, a flashlight, different things that you found around the house that use batteries. So the first thing that I want to just talk about, and at this point, I hope you have your worksheet ready, you're set up and ready to go to take notes. So if you don't, pause the video for just a second, make sure you have your worksheet. If you printed it out, that's great. If not, you have a copy made hopefully on your Google Drive or on Schoology. So make sure you have that up and ready, okay? So this first part I want to talk about is how batteries use energy. Okay, well, I have my little AA battery here, and if you notice, my fingers aren't powering this battery in any way. So one thing to notice about batteries are that they store energy. Okay, so it's not being used yet. It's being stored up. It has that potential energy that we talked about all the way back in September and October. It has the potential to give off energy and electricity and make electrical items work, but right now it's not. Okay, so it's storing the energy. All right, so when we use a battery, we think about, and I also have my remote here, you think about we just plug in our batteries for the remote to work and hopefully turn on the TV or Netflix or anything else that we want to control. So batteries will take their chemical energy. So batteries have usually that alkaline or lithium in them that stores that energy up until it's plugged into some type of metal. And if you ever look at your remote, it has the metal springs. And if I take them out, I have the metal springs at the top. Sorry, I'm trying to zoom in with my camera. That allow the electricity to produce a circuit. And so when your batteries are in your remote, it creates a circuit and it allows the remote to work. So it changes that chemical energy that's stored in battery. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody to go, looking inside a battery. The chemicals inside of a battery can be really dangerous. And again, it's a chemical, so make sure we're practicing smart lab safety with using them. And if you ever have a battery that's cut open or unraveled a little bit, make sure that you just carefully dispose of it. So it changes the chemical energy into what's called electrical energy, which obviously if you turn on your TV and your remote is working, so that means your batteries aren't dead. So from chemical energy, it turns into electrical energy, and then the device transfers that energy into either light, heat, sound, or motion, which we know motion is kinetic. Okay, so when things are moving, it's kinetic. Now, obviously, you don't see your batteries moving in a remote, but I'm going to plug this in. Okay, and you're probably thinking, well, my remote doesn't produce heat, but it does absolutely produce sound and light. And how does it do that? By turning your TV on. Okay, so then you can see the light, you hear the sound, and you can then see the motion on your TV. Usually, if your remote's overheated, it's just because the batteries are working and they may be running out of juice, but hopefully that doesn't happen. So that's how chemical energy transfers into electrical energy and then gives us the power for the devices we want to use. Okay, same thing with your phone. I know some people don't usually see their battery visible, but if you drop your phone, if you've ever been unlucky enough, and you see your battery pop out, it's a little bit flatter. It looks a little bit different, but it's producing that electric energy to get your phone to work. And then we have, if your phone's on vibrate, then that's the kinetic energy or the motion. And obviously our phones light up, they make sounds, they may produce heat if they've been, overused or they're plugged in and they feel kind of hot. But so all different types of energy are created just from that battery, which is really, really cool. So the other part of this video and your section of notes is that there are two sides of the battery. Now, most of you guys, if you've ever plugged batteries into anything, you notice that there's a spring that's attached that has to be lined up right. Now, what happens if you plug in the positive side to the spring? Probably won't work. So there are two sides to the battery, the positive side and then the negative side. So the positive and negative have to be opposite ends so that they work. So if you notice, again, I'm going to use my remote as the example in my camera. If you notice, the batteries aren't going the same way. On this side, it's positive, so it's face up, and the other side, positive's face down. Okay, well, why is that? That's going to create our circuit. And the positive and negative, as you guys have already kind of figured out with the magnets, and we're going to tie everything together since it's the end of the year. The magnets show positive and negative, and we know that they have to be on opposite ends to attract and essentially to work. Okay, so that's kind of important to remember just about how batteries work. So obviously, now let's say, and again, I'm not going to demonstrate turning my TV on. I'm sure you guys can figure it out. But if you notice, if I do the positive and positive on both sides and the negative, what do you think is going to happen with my remote when I go to click my TV on? Probably nothing, okay? Because they're not opposite. They're not flipped in opposite directions to create a circuit. So that means if both sides are flipped up and the negatives are flipped down, then it's not going to work, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about the types of batteries. And if you notice, if you ever look really, really close on a battery, they have the specific voltage. And I'm going to find it on a AAA battery because it's really tiny. So I'm going to hold it up. Okay, and if you notice, I'll show it on this one. This is a little bit better. Okay, it says 1.5. So if you pause it, you can probably see it a little bit better. So it has 1.5 V. So the V stands for voltage. So I have my AA and I have, oh my gosh, rolling, my AAA. Okay, so if you notice, both of these are different in size. I have a smaller AAA battery and a bigger AA battery. Well, why would both of them say 1.5 volts? One's bigger than the other, which means there should be more energy. Not true. There are only a couple types of batteries. These being one of them, they're 1.5 volts, which means just because the size is different doesn't mean that they don't have the same amount of energy. They store the same amount of energy. Usually different devices just call for different types of batteries, okay? So if you notice, there are different sizes, but they hold the same amount or store the same amount of chemical energy, and they're both waiting to be produced into that electrical energy, okay? And then if you think about, this is what's called a 9-volt battery, and if you notice, it's a little bit wider, okay? Usually for some bigger devices. This is a 9-volt battery, and if you find, this is actually a little bit bigger, but you can see the 9V on there, okay? So there are two types of those batteries. There's 9 volts and there's 1.5. So what's the difference between 9 and 1.5? Okay, well, obviously they're all different sizes, but 9 volts means that there's more chemical energy stored, okay? So 9 volts means it's storing more energy. So when we talk about voltage, now we go from chemical energy to voltage. Voltage is the force, okay, that pushes the electricity through the circuit. So again, voltage is the force that pushes the electricity through the circuit. So when we think about voltage, this has 1.5 volts of force stored. Now obviously you can't see the force, nothing's happening, it's not moving yet because it's not in use, but the volts are what's stored. Okay, so voltage is the force that pushes the electricity through the circuit. When we create a current if we create a circuit, we create a current that causes electricity to flow through it. So when I flip my batteries back the right way and I have my batteries kind of set to create a circuit, now they're going to start to flow, okay? If you ever look at your remote, think about the batteries as a circuit because they're flowing with energy. So it flows through the circuit, okay? Now another thing, in the last part of this video, and then I'm going to wrap up and start the next one, is that batteries can either be set up in what is called a series or a parallel. So batteries can be set up in a series or a parallel. What does that mean? A series, if you think about a book series or a Netflix series or something like that, it's consecutive shows or consecutive books or consecutive items. So a series, if you look, and I taped two batteries together, forgive the way they look, okay? These would be batteries in a series, meaning they're lined up side by side, touching at opposite ends. Now, similar to our magnets, if you look, the positive and the negative are on both sides, which means energy can just go right through, okay? So when do you usually see batteries in a series? Well, it's not a remote. You don't see batteries in a remote like this. They're not straight up and down. This would typically be for something like a battery or a drill or something that's going to use a lot of power in a little bit of time. So if you think about a battery that's set up in a series like this, let's say in a flashlight, it's going to give you a lot of power, okay? So if you think about how long a flashlight lasts, it's probably not very long. You probably have to replace the batteries a lot more frequently. So if you think about batteries in a series like this, it gives you more power. Now, if you think about more power, that power might not last as long, okay? So batteries in a series give you more power. Now, the other type is what's called a parallel. Now, you guys should know from math that parallel means side by side, never touching, okay? And we think about parallel lines, but if you think about a parallel video, or I'm sorry, a parallel, thinking of videos that you can turn these on with. If you think about parallel batteries, they're set up side by side. They never touch aside from when they're in a remote. So series is the long ways, parallel is the short way, and batteries in a series typically last longer. If you think about the last time you had to replace the batteries in your remote, it's probably been a while. Unless you really use your remote or it's a video game controller, you might have to go through batteries a little bit more frequently. But batteries in a parallel last longer because they're constantly relying on one another in that circuit, and it only gives off a little bit of force at a time. So it doesn't typically take a lot out of the remote, or the batteries in the remote, I should say, to really power your TV. Okay, they last a really long time. So batteries in a series last longer. Okay, so that's part one of our video about batteries and how different types of energy are formed in batteries. So take a little break before you go to the next video and make sure again that you have your worksheet handy. All right, good luck.